Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of the Level Builder tutorial series. Today we're going to be focusing on two things. The first one is a rather small thing where we're just going to be adding some error messages, but the other thing we're going to be adding is an actual playable mode to this game. So the game is going to have two different modes that you'll be able to switch between whenever you want. You can just switch back and forth. So let's get right into it. Okay, to start off, we're going to want to be opening up the new grid script. Okay, I'll just make that full screen. So, what we're going to want to be doing is we're going to actually want some error messages. So instead of returning things like fail, we're going to want to return something that's actually useful to us, such as saying it's too many levels or the name is already taken, or something along those lines. Alright, so just to start off, instead of returning fail, we want to return the phrase too many levels. And also, just to make things look nicer, I'm just going to add the extra equal sign. Alright, but basically this too many levels tells us exactly what there is. There are too many levels because it's testing right here to see if there are 10 created levels, and if there are, then you can't be creating any more levels. And remember, this script is called to create new levels. Just as this comment clearly says, we need to be checking if the name already exists. So in order to do this, all we need to do is create a little for loop, and what it'll do is it'll go through every single level that was created so far. So created levels -1, because remember the created levels variable is one bigger than the actual indices of the numbers. Alrighty, so this is a simple little for loop, and all we need to do is see if global level array at value I, and remember position 0 holds the actual name, and then argument 0. So we need to see if it equals that, and then if it does, then we have a problem. Then all we need to do is return naming conflict. So now we know that there's something wrong with the name. Alrighty? Because remember, argument 0 is something being passed in from the script, and we need to pass in the name of the new grid. So if everything runs completely fine, then we can just return the phrase complete. So now we know that we've completed the creation of a new level that is completely blank and named correctly and everything. Alrighty, so we can just save that script, and we're basically done with the things we need to do on the new grid. The next thing we're going to want to be doing is we're going to want to change the name of this variable. So right now it's called controller game, but we just want to change this to controller game edit, because we're going to have another variable, or rather object, that's going to hold all the information that we need, all the rules for the game, when we're actually playing the game. So yeah, these controllers are going to control separate game modes, and then it's going to be destroyed and created when it's need to, like when you're switching game modes. Okay, so we're only going to really need one event for this for now. We just want an event for key pressed and for the letter P, because we're just going to use the letter P for playing the game for now. Alrighty, let me just find it right here. Okay, so basically I'm just going to want to do set edit mode. Okay, and what we're going to want to do is global.edit mode equals true, because if someone has the game playing right now and then they press P, they're already playing the game, so they want to switch into edit mode. So we want to make edit mode equal to true. Okay, and then what's going to happen is we're going to create an instance XY. We're going to create an instance of the game edit, because right now we are using controller gameplay, but we need to be using controller game edit because we're switching into that mode. And then of course we're going to want to destroy this because we just want to switch between the two game modes. Alrighty, and then we can just use the keyword layer for the layer that we're already in right now. And of course we're going to want this more up here, not really down there towards the bottom. Alrighty. Also, we're going to need to make a quick little change to the way the camera works. So, right now we're always just controlling the camera, but we don't want to be controlling the camera when we're actually playing the game, because the camera will just follow the player around. So all we really need to do here is see if global.edit mode equals true. And then if it does, we can just run through all this code. And okay, I need to put the squiggly bracket down at the bottom. And just to keep my code looking nice, I'll do that. Okay, we're also going to create an end step event, if I can find it. Okay, here we go. And inside here, we need to see if the global edit mode equals false. And then if it does, we need to set our current location to the object player X location, and the object player sprite width divided by 2, and then for Y, because remember, we want the camera to be looking at the exact center of the player. And the thing is, the player's X and Y, like origin points, the points where it actually shows X and Y, is not in the center of the object. We can go in here real quick and see that. Actually, yeah, because here's the origin point, so that's where the X and Y is coming from. We want to be right here. So all we need to do is see how big the width is and how big the height is, like find the numbers for that and divide it by 2, and then add it to this, and then we're right in the center. That's right, height divided by 2. So we need to go back to what we were working on before and think about how this script is handling things. So basically what it's doing is it's returning a string telling you what the error is. And well, I kind of messed with the code, but what it was doing, it was just creating a new grid and not caring, and it was, if something goes wrong, it just goes wrong, it doesn't do anything. But what we're actually going to be doing is handling these exceptions, basically, that we're getting, like these returns. If you know anything about Java, it actually does a lot of this, like you do lots of throwing and catching these errors, and we're basically dealing with the same thing here, where this script is basically throwing us errors here. So, yeah, I don't know, you might not understand that, but that's perfectly fine. It's not even how GameMaker really handles things, but it's still kind of something to think about. So, we're actually going to do something different here. We're going to do getString. So, what's going on here is GameMaker has these built-in functions where a little message board thing will pop up and you can actually input your own input. So, we can just name the level, and then we say name here so they know that they need to input a name, and then the default name is just not named, alrighty. And then we also need to get a string for the author, and then no author. Alrighty, so we're getting these inputs, and okay, so we're getting these inputs basically, and we're doing nothing with it right now, but we know that we're getting thrown some exceptions basically. So we need to, so basically I'm going to say handle issues. So what happens if there are no issues? Well, then it will return complete. So we just need to test to see if it does not return complete. Because if it doesn't return complete, then something went wrong. I mean, there's lots of different things that could have gone wrong. So what we can just do is we can just use the command show message. So we can actually show the player what went wrong. We can just say error. And then we can just return them what was returned to us. So maybe it'll say like too many levels. So then they'll see this message saying that there are too many levels, and they'll be able to know that, and they'll be like, oh, okay. Or just whatever. So basically they can see any of these messages. So I think we should try this out. So I'm pressing T and it's coming up with this. So I need to choose an author. I'll say Evan. Name Mario level 1. Alrighty, so it just creates a new level with no errors. So yeah, we didn't get any errors there, and it just worked out just fine. It might also be a new concept to you, storing these basically putting these methods inside of getString, or like inside of the script. We could have done something here where we could have said like name equals getString, and then inputted the name, but we're just using them once here, so we might as well just put them in right inside. Alrighty, so now we have a way better way of setting up the levels. We really need to get into the edit mode though, because that's also very important. We need to add a new situation when the player presses P while they are using the game edit object. So while they are editing the game and they press P. So we need to do some simple stuff, and well, that went weird. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be switching into the other game mode. But in order to switch into the other game mode, the player needs to have created a player, because they're switching from edit mode to play mode, but they can't play the game if there's no player. So we can just simply check if the player has created a player, and if they have, then well, a player will exist in a level. So that's all we need to worry about. So what we can just do here is just set the edit mode to false, and then create on a specific layer where we are on the same layer, doesn't really matter, and game play, because that's the object we need to use. Then once that's done, we can just destroy this object, and this is basically the same code as is in controller gameplay when the player presses P, because then they switch into this mode. But the only difference is that we need to check if there actually is a player, because we don't want them playing the game if there's actually no player to play the game with. Yes, we also want to get rid of this cleanup code inside the game edit and put it in here. Alrighty. So naturally we're gonna want to throw in the game start object as well, right in the start of the game, and we're gonna want it on top. We're gonna want it on top of the other variables because we want it to be instantiated first, because it's starting out the entire game naturally. So the game mode is all set up. Everything is all set up because, well, if I place the player and then I press P, you can actually see the camera jumped right here towards the center and the grid disappeared because, well, inside the game edit we have a grid running, but inside game play we don't. And then if I switch back, you can see the grid reappears because the game play object is being destroyed, and then the game edit is coming in and taking over, and then that's always drawing the grid. So that's pretty nice to have, but we can't do anything with the player. I can't move around, I can't interact at all with the game. So that's the last thing we're going to add. And actually it's not really too bad to add. To start off with, we can just go inside the create event and then set up some basic things. So I'm just going to say set up gravity, and for now grav equals 6, speed equals 4, horizontal equals 0, and vertical equals 0. These are just basic values that I'm setting up, and I'm not spelling out the word speed because that's actually a built-in value along with gravity. But we want to be handling these values ourselves because we want to have complete control over everything we do. So when you're using the built-in GameMaker values, they're really useful and they're really nice to just set something up quick, but we want to be doing our own special things that you can't necessarily fit into the way GameMaker's built-in variables work. And we don't have to use them. It's completely fine not to use them. But the last thing we're going to need to do is create a step event. And here's where the main code goes, the main movement code actually. So first of all, we need to be checking something. We need to see if global edit mode equals false, of course. And actually, I like to do the doubles equals because that's how coding languages usually have you do it. So we're going to be needing to do lots and lots of checks here. This is going to be fairly similar to the movement code that we use in the camera, but we're basically going to be just checking for keyboard check, and then virtual key left, that's what VK stands for, and then or we also want to see if someone is pressing, and then or is like a thing that converts the letter to a number, basically. It's kind of a weird thing. And yeah, and then if that is true, then what we want to do is we want to set the horizontal variable minus equals to the speed. Okay, and we also need to be checking 3 other times. We want to see the right key, and we want to see the letter D. And if this is true, then we can increase this by the speed. And then for up or W, we can set up the jump. Although we're not going to do that in this episode, because jumping is actually very precarious. I honestly don't like coding jump systems because they require usually a lot of work, and they're not always simple to set up. But we'll look into that in a future episode. But we just want to get the basic movements in place for now. And actually, we're not even going to do anything with the down key for now. We might set that up later. So actually, I was wrong. We only have 3. And then all we need to do is set the vertical equal to the gravity after all this. Because, of course, we always want there to be a gravity at the end of each, basically, movement that we're checking for. So then what we can do is we can see if we're meeting. So place meeting is just checking to see if we're meeting the specific object which we're going to specify. So x plus horizontal, so like the total movement we're going to do, and then y, and then parent block. So parent block encompasses every single block in the game. So basically we're seeing if there's no blocks there, or actually if there is a block there, then we need to do something special, because we want to get as close as we can without actually touching it. Because if we're getting really close to a block but we're still a few pixels away, we want to go those few pixels, because we want like basically pixel perfect collisions. We want to make it look like we're basically touching it, like give the illusion that we're actually touching the object, basically. Well, I mean, we basically are, so it's not really an illusion. So what we're going to do is sine of horizontal, which sine just converts the number to a 1, a 0, or a -1. Any number. So if you're given 80, then it just converts it to 1. If you're given -2, then it's -1. And why would we want to use this? Well, we want to be as close to the pixels as we can. And we're moving more than 1 pixel at a time. But if we're super close to an object, we want to get as close as we can without actually hitting and messing up everything by actually touching it. And then of course we want to do parent block again. And then while doing this, we'll just increase x by sine of horizontal. Otherwise, if we're not close to an object, then we can just increase by the horizontal speed, because it doesn't matter, because there's nothing there to worry about. Now we're going to need to do something very similar for the y values. Alrighty, I bet you can guess what we can do here. You just need to use the vertical value, and then cut that, paste that, and vert. And then of course we want to increase by the vertical, and we want to increase y, not x. And then otherwise, y plus equals vertical. Alrighty. And there's one last thing we gotta make sure of. We have to reset the values for the horizontal and vertical at the end of this, because they'll just keep adding up if we don't. and then it'll be huge numbers. So reset, and then basically pixel perfect collisions, and then add gravity. Yeah, I'm basically just commenting this code, and then basic movement. Alrighty, if I save that and we press play, let's see if this works. So I'll just add that right there, and I'll press P to play. So you can see we fell, we can move all around, and then we can fall. It all looks pretty nice, I think. Okay, so I also found out about one quick error that we're going to need to fix. So you can go into the object player, create event, and you can actually see I made some changes to the code here. So basically what was going on was the object player, what happens is when it's spawned in, it destroys the other one, like if there is another one, like when you're switching to the different game modes and everything, because like we only want one object player. So what it just does is it destroys the other one. But what it actually also does is it replaces the current location with the ID of sky, so like an empty box basically. But the thing is, the player can fall outside of the room, and there's no grid location outside of the room because the grid only needs to be locations inside. So what we need to do is we need to check if the player is inside. So you can just like look at this code real quick and kind of add it to your game to make it all work. And so if the player is in the room, then we just replace it with the sky, and if it isn't, then we need to destroy the instance. We need to actually, because we're using with, so we can just do instance destroy. So yeah, that's a quick fix, and thank you for watching this episode. I hope you learned some stuff, and you can now play around and actually play and create and play in some of your levels that you're making. Of course, we still need to add jump and everything to make it interesting, but it's a start.